What's wrong with Mighty Number 9? Keiji Inafune, the proud but mistakenly described creator of Mega Man, left Capcom in 2010 to start his own company, losing the rights to many of the franchises he once cherished. 3 years later, along with the help of his new company Ecomcept and the Mega Man Zero developers Inti Creates, a little Kickstarter for a Mega Man-style platformer called Mighty Number 9 was announced. The project took the world by storm. Wow, the creator of Mega Man is making a new game. Even though that's wrong, he created Zero, actually. The Kickstarter soared far past its initial goal, raising nearly $4 million US. The funding started early in development, so they set an estimated release date of April 2015. And this was nowhere close to reality. Promised betas and many other builds were not even completed on schedule. Even shortly after the Kickstarter met its goal, Inafune saw more funding for the project as if this game was going to be the biggest and baddest thing to happen in video games. I mean, the trailer sums that up perfectly.
Do you like awesome things that are awesome? Then you gotta play this game, dude.
Actually, it didn't, and the fans hated the trailer and they hated the game. After all this praise and excitement they gave the project, not to mention the Kickstarter pledges, the game was finally released in June 2016, over a year past its initial estimate. The game was met with horrid reviews. The fact is, this is not Mega Man. Section 1. The Blue Bomber? Mighty Number 9 was obviously designed to capture the feel of the Mega Man games. It made sense. Capcom wasn't doing it, so why not try it? This is the main character, Vec. He shoots lemons, and this is his creator, Dr. White. Hey, that kind of rhymes with cute blonde tips and tricks girl named Call, kind of like roll call or beck and call, like rock and roll. Alright, it's obvious. Not only does this game want to play like Mega Man, it wants to look like Mega Man. The story is designed the same. 8 other robots have suddenly began to run amok, and one robot that's built just like them needs to stop them. Beck defeats enemies and collects their cell power, spelled with an X because that makes it extreme. This is how Beck collects the powers of the robots that he defeats. So it's a carbon copy, but here's the thing here. Mega Man Classic looked like this and cost very little to develop. This raised millions of dollars and it just looks not good. Early on in the Kickstarter, an update was released saying, here's a demo made in just 7 days. Imagine what the final product would look like. The final product looked worse. Much worse. The cel-shaded look can work, but without any bloom or harsh shadows, it just looks dated. This could have been made for the GameCube or PlayStation 2, not something to expect from something that came out after the Xbox One and PS4. How does this even compare? Sure, many other developers spend in the upwards of tens of millions of dollars, but this is just a retro-inspired platformer. A game like Shovel Knight proves that the retro-style platformers can be done with a smaller budget. Just because Mighty Number 9 wanted the pseudo 3D look doesn't actually add that much to the cost, especially with the simplicity of the Mega Man games. Section 2. The Gameplay. So maybe they didn't get the graphics right, but that's fine. They made it look enough like Mega Man. How did it fare on the gameplay front? Well, as mentioned, Beck shoots lemons, no charge shots, nothing, just jumping and shooting. Well, that's not true. They also added this other mechanic, the dash. This is Mighty Number 9's big claim to fame. Beck is Jump, Shoot, and Dash Man. Enemies can be absorbed while dashing through them, giving Beck power-ups, it creates combos, and it honestly feels good when players get the rhythm. The problem is it starts to blur the whole heavily inspired by Mega Man motif. Part of the challenge with Mega Man was his lack of movement options. It made every jump that much more nerve-wracking because, geez, it cuts it close sometimes. The dashing made jumps much easier to reach and even makes avoiding enemies very easy. Speaking of enemies, the 8 robot let's see what they're actually called here. The 8 mighty numbers? Oh, that's just cheesy. I would have called them the prime numbers. Now I'll see myself out. The 8 mighty numbers are clearly inspired by Mega Man's Robot Masters, only with a lot more color and character, which is fine. Fighting them, however, ranges from fun-ish to just plain aggravating. See, the problem is the dash mechanic is clearly designed to separate bosses into phases. Shoot, 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 glow, whoosh, repeat. But oh no, here comes the super attack! This wasn't in the original Mega Man games. It was a straight up, tense encounter for the entirety of the battle, and if players didn't know the weaknesses, the fight was just that much more difficult. Speaking of weaknesses, Mighty Number 9 doesn't seem to understand the importance of these abilities. A handful of times a player can guess the correct weakness, but weapons themselves seem to have no soul. The treads from Mighty Number 5 feel cool at first, but actually don't bring anything to the gameplay. It's just a quick way to beat Mighty Number 8. Also, some abilities like Mighty No. 2's Ice Shot is good on everyone, as it causes enemies to become frozen and take damage over time, even when otherwise unhittable. The gameplay as a whole is fine as a standalone platformer, it just began to stray a bit too far away from Mega Man, although they did manage to keep one thing: the difficulty. Section 3. This game is hard! This isn't to say the game shouldn't be challenging, it's more that Mighty No. 9 is just plain cheap in its level design. Having the ability to dash makes it way too tantalizing to just spam over large gaps and long empty rooms quickly, but since it doesn't have a hitbox, even the slowest enemies seem to be placed a tad too conveniently. It seems like when players are following the level and not just flying over it, which by the way is also bad level design, the game likes to place enemies immediately in front of pitfalls, meaning that simple miscalculations can lead to a player's doom. What's odd is the game seems to favor having many instant death obstacles, whereas classic Mega Man used them sparingly. The reason being is that in Mega Man, it calculated the damage that enemies did into the level design very smartly. Playing aggressively leads to taking too many hits and dying, and forces players to stop and understand how to handle each room. When spikes and pitfalls were utilized, there were much less enemies, allowing for players to figure it out rather than getting knocked off easily. If there were enemies, they were slow moving, adding just enough tension but not being too hard to deal with. They also like to repeat puzzles in order to properly prepare the player for the trickier rooms ahead, unlike Mighty No. 9, which just throws them right at you. Dying in these types of traps already leaves a bad taste in the player's mouth, making them want to try again and again to hope to improve. But the other problem with Mighty No. 9 is it's just poorly coded. The hitboxes are hard to fully measure, making it easy to catch the lip of an instant death spike or laser. Also, why are there instant death lasers? There's too many pixel-perfect platforming sections where a mistake could easily lead to a death for the player. There's this room in Mighty No. 4's level with these turbines going haywire. Touch them and die. Then players come to a seemingly dead end. Where do they go? If they wait for the hint, which they shouldn't have to do, it says to crouch dash. Every other dash like this, Beck crouched automatically, but now players have to know to hold down to get it. Also, Beck needs to stand literally as close as possible to be able to make it under and not get hit. This is just plain frustrating, and for a team of developers known for their work in the Mega Man X and Zero games, this is the kind of thing that fans shouldn't have a hard time with. This is Mega Man. There's been literal dozens of games and hundreds of levels designed to have just the right amount of challenge that pushes players to improve and learn from their mistakes, not die in the hands of cheap programming and gameplay that expects players to move fast only to be thwarted for doing so. It takes so much away from what the rest of the game offers, like the rooms where Beck needs to defeat waves of enemies. Thanks to the fast movement, it's fun to try and clear them as fast as possible, but geez, he doesn't take much damage. The fact remains, this took Mega Man's level of challenge a bit too outside the comfort zone of longtime fans, leading to the backlash that it received. Mighty No. 9 isn't actually a bad game, it just didn't live up to what fans wanted. They wanted Mega Man. Sure, make it a little bit more HD if they wanted pseudo 3D textures, that's fine, so long as it all works. But it doesn't. Thanks to some unorthodox new gameplay mechanics and levels and bosses that don't fully utilize these abilities, it just feels like a mess that's trying way too hard to look like Mega Man and keeps saying that it is. It can't even be blamed on the fact that the game was rushed or something because it was delayed countless times. Many speculations have pointed fingers at Inafune's management skills, and considering how deadlines weren't met, it seems to be the culprit. It strayed too far from being Mega Man, yet tried incessantly to proclaim that it was a spiritual successor. It raises the question that maybe the game would have been better off being a more original work, alluding back to Shovel Knight. And then this raises new fears in backers of projects like Yooka-Laylee that's trying ever so hard to be like Banjo-Kazooie. Mighty No. 9 was a big letdown to fans in the indie developer Kickstarter world, and yet they didn't even try to apologize for letting down the hundreds of thousands of backers they claimed they were so thankful for. That is what's wrong with Mighty No. 9. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button, and if you'd like to see more videos that discuss infamously panned video games, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.